evening. Hey, good to see everybody. We are going to have a short clip to start our night, but I thought I would handle a little bit of housekeeping ahead of time. Good to see everybody back. It's been a couple weeks. Last time, well, I guess when we left here last, you guys were throwing things at me, which is a reminder. If you weren't here or you got kiddos who are interested, we got some left. So please come by and pick some up. The other thing that I'll share with you before we officially get going tonight is the couple that runs or walks together stays together. The ROCC 5K is coming up. Well, we'll in 2 weeks we have a unit on expectations. We'll talk about that then, before the race. That's right. Yeah. I would love you guys to help support Sunnyside Ministry. If you want something for your car, you can grab a magnet on the way out, but always a good time. But so tonight, reconciliation, and then we've got a few out tonight. So that just means that the odds of winning a little date night just got better for most of us. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's right. Oh, it always pays. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's get going on reconciliation.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the lesson on reconciliation. As Paul told us in 2 Corinthians 5, we are ministers of reconciliation, and this lesson is a great opportunity to fulfill that role. Now, in prepping for this lesson, I thought about the movie Karate Kid, the original from 1984, so stick with me for a second. This is where Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel karate. It started with Daniel doing all sorts of manual labor. Remember, sand the floor and paint the fence and wax on, wax off. He thought it was a waste of time until Mr. Miyagi showed him that by putting all those moves together, he now knew karate. These past few lessons, we've been learning the moves of peacemaking, and in this lesson, we are going to put them all together. Forgiveness, making amends, and now reconciliation. Reconciling with your spouse is simply reaching agreement that a conflict between you is settled. All has been owned, confessed, and forgiven. You both agree that sin from the past won't hinder your future together. From a facilitation perspective, this lesson is different from others in that you are not necessarily looking to discuss answers to the questions. You want couples to share their experience exercising the process. You want to ask open-ended questions like, hey, what was easy or difficult about the process? How did you feel afterwards? How can you begin to make this a regular practice in your marriage? Now, if couples want to discuss their answers to the questions, certainly do it. You're past the halfway point of the group, so I suspect that most couples are feeling pretty comfortable sharing. But for some, the discussion might be a little raw or even unfinished, so be sensitive to their willingness to share specifics. There are a couple of challenges that often come up in this lesson. The first challenge is found in the truth about marriage at the bottom. Some spouses are skeptical about reconciliation because they think it means that everything is now okay in the relationship. In other words, I can say everything is reconciled, but still have concerns that the conflict might happen again. Well, it might. The truth is that a reconciled relationship does not necessarily mean that trust has been rebuilt. That may take time, and that's normal. The second challenge is for spouses that find themselves in the last section when conflict is unresolved. A couple might go through the entire peacemaking process, and one of them does not completely own their part. This will frustrate the spouse who has owned their part, and they probably listed that frustration in action item 2. Now, for the spouse who owned their stuff, just 3 things to encourage them with. First, acknowledge their hurt and remind them to stay open to reconciliation. Pray that the Spirit moves in the heart of their spouse and brings them to the point of confession. Second, stay inside your circle. Forgive your spouse for their sins, confess your own sins, and make amends for them. Your actions might be just the thing that the Spirit uses to soften your spouse's heart. Third, if your spouse is not seeing their sin, there's a process to confront them. Lesson 13 has a section on confronting sin that you can reference, plus an example at the end of Appendix D. This week, double down to pray over your couples. The enemy wants things kept in the dark, and this week especially is an opportunity for couples to bring things into the light and work through them together. At the end of the lesson, I hope your couples have a healthier view of how to resolve conflict. Look, we all know that conflict in marriage is inevitable and has the potential to divide us. But by using these tools, conflict becomes an opportunity to drive us towards oneness. This week, let's be ministers of reconciliation.
I wanted to share that. That's one of the leader resources that's provided, and some of you may have looked into the Watermark resources and you see within Re-Engage in your sign up. You have access to those as well, but I thought that one was especially good relative to the difficulty of this week, the intent of this week, some of the cautions of this week. When we talk about reconciliation, particularly within this entire peacemaking process. So hope that just sort of sets us off tonight. And again, we're really sort of completing this peace room, this peacemaking room tonight with reconciliation. And then next week we're going to move out of it and move into something else, and I'll share about that later. But reconciliation, an agreement between both of you that a past sin will not hinder future peace. That's really powerful to think about it in that term. A past sin will not hinder future peace. The offense has been confessed, forgiven, addressed, made amends, corrected, and settled. And you know, there's words we kind of think about when we think about reconciliation, that resolved or settled, but also in our marriages. When we've reached reconciliation, we can say, okay, we've agreed, we've put things in place, there's a responsibility of correction that's been agreed to. Let's leave that behind. Let's look forward. Let's make that straight line now with the hands on our plow. And so I think of that in those terms as well. Back to our chart here on the peacemaking process. If you weren't here last time or hadn't picked one up, again, that's on the back. We have a peacemaking card that this is on the back of, and this is that final step where we both agree the issue is resolved. It's resolved. We can now put our hands on the plow and move forward. But again, there's that intersection that it's only because of the reliance on the Lord in this that we can forgive as He forgave us, but we require His strength and sometimes just continual discernment in the ability to forgive. We look to the Lord for making amends, for putting into place how we're going to correct and make right that offense. And then we look to the Lord for that continued strength in moving forward and not constantly holding on to what's behind us. And so we continue to think about this as part of the peacemaking process. And so as we look through, again, the scripture verses this week, there's a reason they were heavy on the idea of peace and peacemaking. And that's really what we want to think about reconciliation. Say this with me. So then, let us pursue what makes up peace and for mutual upbuilding. So let us prioritize peaceful things. Let us prioritize the peace in our relationship. Let us choose our words and our actions that increase and have this mutual strengthening of our faith and of one another. Right? What an instruction to make that an intentional aspect of who we are and what we do. The second part of that, may the Lord give strength to His people, and may the Lord bless His people with peace. I always like this verse because there does seem to be a connection that the Lord's strength is necessary when peace is involved. And that while we have a responsibility to pursue peace and to prioritize peace, that ultimately it's our reliance on the Lord in the peacemaking process that makes it possible. And so I think that's a really wonderful psalm to hold on to as well, that the Lord would, the blessing of our reliance on Him would be just peace in our home, peace in our marriage, that we would be peacemakers, which we'll talk about here in a second too. And so peace, 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 peace. We're going to have a lot about peace here in a second with our activity, but what does peace look like? You got a word or a phrase? What does peace look like? How do we know when we're there? Calm, okay. It's a posture, perhaps, of Okay.
Summer day with a cool mountain lake and
I do not have that in my notes, Don, but that's really good. I like that. I like that. Okay. Togetherness. Peace looks like an element of that unity of God's design in that, right? What was ordained and desired. Smooth sailing. Okay. Okay. Having a peace about that, right? If we start about the peace that, that is beyond all understanding, the peace that we receive from the Lord in our relationship with Him, sometimes, and that might push back on some of this, is sometimes that doesn't look smooth or feel calm, but yet there's an assurance in that peace, right? And so I do like to say that peace, I don't think the definition of peace is the absence of conflict. I think a good definition of peace also is that commitment to humility and honesty and pursuit in the midst of conflict, where reconciliation is the target and the objective. And in that, we almost have that same settled, like, I can be at peace with this, even though it doesn't feel good. I can be at peace with this, even though it does. And so when we reach it, we know there still might be more conflict, but there's a greater unity. There's a greater patience. There's a greater integrity in our relationship. And I think peace moves in that. There's no wrong or right. I'm just saying those are some things I think we think about. It's easy sometimes, not just in marriage enrichment, but in anything we do, to kind of say, well, this is what I want it to be. And then, well, how do we define that? What's that look like? Right? We want peace at home, but how do we know we've arrived when there's peace at home, particularly in a fallen world? We can get it. So steadfastness, right? That assurance in the Lord that creates the peace within our relationship. So what does peacemaking look like? If we are peacemakers. Okay, there is a great humility in that, right?
I think a lot of it has
Openness, okay, as a peacemaker, right? Okay. Present. Oh, okay, you're getting at something, Lenny, right? So peacemaking is not passive. It's active, it's present, right? So to be a peacemaker in our marriage, if we're both going to be peacemakers, we can't withdraw from that, right? Where do we hear peacemaker? Does anything come to mind specifically when you hear peacemaker from Scripture? From Jesus? What does He say? Jesus is saying, blessed are those who are actively about creating peace, creating unity, creating honesty and humility, uniting, because by pursuing what is a characteristic of God, the God of peace, the God of all peace, then we are blessed because we now identify as His, as one of His children. That's the blessedness, is that when we pursue one of the characteristics, virtues of God, His very being as a God of all peace, and we display peacemaking as a pursuit and a genuine desire in our home, in our marriage, in our world around us, then we are displaying the very identity of God. And in that, the blessedness is, hey, you're one of His. That's big, right? And so, again, easy said than done when we're in the middle of something really big in our relationship, in our marriage. Really easier said than done. But if we anchor in this, if we sort of begin with the idea that whatever comes our way, we want to move through these steps. We want to be identified as a child of God, as an heir of God. And we know that Jesus said that if we will demonstrate His virtues, His values, His characteristics, who He is, we'll be identified as His. Then we also will create that ability to have peace in our marriage. And so it's a peacemaker, what a high calling. And what a wonderful opportunity. What a privilege to approach one another in marriage as joint peacemakers. Again, demonstrating to the world Christ and His church. The gospel to the world as mutual peacemakers in your marriage. All right. Well, so I hope, again, we've got a little activity, and then you're going to have a good amount of time in your groups tonight. And had 2 weeks. I hope you've had a chance to work through it. And as we move through the peacemaking room, or the peace room, next week we will be beginning construction on the living room. We've got a couple things we want to share with you. Carol Bonner is going to be here to share a wonderful testimony of commitment. And next week we have a wonderful opening video from Skip Heitzing on commitment, covenant versus contract. And just a great week as we move into this living room aspect of the Re-Engage house. So I look forward to that as well. And Natalie's going to be back to share something about a fall retreat that you guys are going to have first rights of refusal on before the church. So we want to share more about that next week as well. But good. All right. Reconciliation. We're good? Okay. So here's what we want to do before we go. A little kind of get to know one another, and at the same time, maybe send a couple of you guys out on some dates. We're going to do Kahoot. Everybody.